We are on episode number 18 of Pest Control Millionaire. We're going to talk all about, talk about some sales. I'm sure we'll talk about some marketing, some operations. Today we have one of my really good friends, Ted Glaser. He was the president of Summit Lawns, and they're out of Lincoln, Nebraska. I think I've known Ted for 6-7 years. He's an absolute monster doing some big things, and I'm happy to have you here. So thanks for coming hang out with us for an hour or so.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. Excited.
Yeah. So the first thing that I want to talk to you about, and I mentioned it before the call, was you went to college, Union College, and you went for small business management and entrepreneurship. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that and then how it applied to your business?
Yeah. It's funny. I never really think about my college experience when it comes to my business now. I don't have regrets of going to college at all. I have some amazing friends to this day from college. I think college taught me how to teach myself. It taught me how to work with a lot of different kinds of people. But man, I have a small business management degree, which sounds super relevant to someone who runs a small business. But it's, at least the college that I went to, which not like Harvard or an Ivy League college or anything like that. It was taught by people who were just teaching a curriculum out of a book. They didn't have any experience on like what it actually takes to run a business. What we know now, what it takes to start running the size of companies that we're trying to build anymore. You just don't learn that in the classroom. The things that I think the biggest takeaway I learned in college was probably the language of accounting, just to understand like accounting. So I kind of understood that from the very beginning of my business, but I got to say, I don't have a lot to say about my classroom experience because it just did not really pertain to growing my company. I started it while I was in school, but like what I learned in the classroom was just not super applicable to what I do now, which is a terrible testament to the class. But
that's kind of that's why I wanted to bring it up, because it's got to be really hard for someone to teach you small business and they never actually ran a business before. And maybe some of them have, but in your circumstance, they didn't.
Yeah. Well, you know what? And I can tell you this. So a lot of people in our circles operate on EOS, or other, similar methodologies. There's Pinnacle, there's Elite. Yeah. There's a few of them out there. A lot of those businesses, or those methodologies, they have a couple books that they're based on. Good to Great by Jim Collins is like, a classic. I actually did have that as one of the books that was taught in one of my classes. But at the time, I was my senior year of college. I think we were doing like 100,000 in revenue, and I tried to understand. I remember writing papers on like concepts from Good to Great, and I was using Summit Lawns as like my case study to then write my papers. And I will say, like, my understanding of that book now, and like Jim Collins' books since then, like Beyond Entrepreneurship and stuff like that. I understand way better now what he's saying then. And I guess it could be argued they were trying to teach it to me back then. I just didn't get it. I didn't understand how to apply some of those concepts. But yeah, there's not a lot I can pull from that I can really think about that I use from the classroom anymore.
And I find that fascinating that you actually started your business in college. I didn't know that either. So you're going to college for entrepreneurship and you started Summit Lawns at the same time.
Yeah. So my dad is blind. And so he can't drive. He can't, he can see, but he can't like legally drive. He can't he's a little he's pretty limited in that regard. But he's really made a great career for himself, and he decided he wanted to get into rental real estate. So when I was younger, he hired a college kid to drive me and my little brother around to, mow his properties for him for like $5 an hour. And when I turned 16, I said, "Hey Dad, pay me a little bit more and I'll mow the properties myself." And it was like 5 properties. I was getting like $10 to mow them or something like that. But that's kind of what started the concept of like having a business. It's how I paid for my school bill. So I started mowing lawns when I was in high school. I actually went to a small Christian high school, and I had to pay for my own school bill. I was a janitor at my high school. I was a server at a Village Inn, which is like a restaurant in the Midwest, kind of like an IHOP. And then I was mowing lawns, and I did that through college just to pay for my school bill. I had no plans of actually starting a company. It was just what I was doing to pay my school bill. And I started getting my first commercial contracts. I think I was like 19 years old. I think it was my sophomore year. Light bulb clicked. I was like, oh man, like I might be able to make a career out of this. So by my junior year, I was ready to drop out. Like I didn't want to finish school at all because I was so overwhelmed. I was going to class, at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, scheduling my classes to be done by 1 p.m., going and working until dark, coming back, taking a shower, taking some documentation on my notes on what we did that day so we could do billing at the end of the month. Then going back to the school, go to study with friends until midnight or 1 a.m., go to sleep for a couple hours and then repeat. And it was brutal.
That's awesome. And like I said, I didn't even know that story. So that's super cool. And I'm sure it's very valuable for a lot of people. You said that your dad was blind, like legally blind, and he still started a company?
Yeah. So he grew up on a farm in North Dakota, and I think just like being self-employed is just in his blood. But he moved down to Lincoln, and he wanted to be in real estate. So he was just always fascinated by rental properties and real estate. And so he's a broker. He helps people buy and sell homes. And then he had, at his peak, he had, I think, 60 units. But in 08 and 09, my parents got divorced, and through the actually they got divorced in 05, and then the 08, 09 recession, just a lot collapsed with all of that. And he went through the ringer with it. But I mean, he's never let his vision ever stop him for anything. I mean, he does exactly what he wants to do. It's been super inspiring in terms of like, don't take no for an answer. If you hit a roadblock, find another way around and keep going. So there's no excuse.
That's impressive. Like, and you brought it up, there's no excuses. All these people are like, I'm too young, I'm too old, I'm not smart enough, I'm not this. But you have people who are, your dad's a prime example, who's blind, but still went out there and made a life for himself as an entrepreneur. That's so impressive. When sometimes we think we have it bad, right?
Well, it's funny, man. It's like, I mean, there are so many mindsets that we can talk about. I think that's the most powerful thing. Speaking of college and tuition, I would say the most powerful thing that any of us can do, as we progress is find the next consultant or coach or peer group or whatever, because that's continuing education. That's tuition. Like, I still pay tuition to this day by being a part of certain groups or having mentors or whatever. I'll never stop paying to be taught. But a lot of the things that we get taught are like mindsets. And sometimes you learn certain mindsets from our parents. Sometimes we learn them from a coach or a mentor. Like, the number one investment we can make is in our brain. And that was a mindset I learned from him, was just like, there's always another option. If you hit a roadblock, just adapt, redirect, and then keep moving.
That's great, because the first thing my first mentor ever told me, the very first thing ever came out of his mouth that I heard was think bigger.
Yeah.
So from day one of having a mentor, it's like, okay, I got to realign my thoughts here. So was JP your first mentor besides your dad, or did you have someone before that?
Well, here's what's funny. I didn't really join Academy until kind of the end. I was only in Academy right at the end of the whole thing. My very first mentor, I don't know if you're going to remember this. There was a website called Lawn Site, and it was like a post board or whatever. It was like kind of before Facebook really took off.
I remember it
for like Facebook groups. Mm-hmm. And there's a guy, his name was Sean Adams, and he had like a website, a blog called like Lawn Care Success, and he had like a little book, like $50. And I bought his book when I was in college, and I started using it. Had like all these templates of letters to like use for clients and like how to go sell commercial properties. And I started using that, and I grew the company. I mean, we went from 0 to $1 million in 4 years right out of college, going all in on commercial. And I hired him to be a consultant for me. And he coached me through for probably 3 years. And we hit a point probably in like 2015 where we parted. I think it was 15 or 16. We parted ways because it was time to go on to different things. But he was my first coaching consultant, and I think I hired him when I was doing 200,000, and I think it was like $600 a month or something like that. And I was like, man, is this really worth it? Like, can I afford this? And small-minded thinking, speaking of think bigger, it changed my trajectory of my life, of someone who's already paid the dumb tax. So I don't have to pay the dumb tax, to just, have the answers on what to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that. Do you remember what that book was called?
Man. Well, his blog was called Lawn Care Success. And man, we're talking like 15 years ago now, 10 years ago, something like that. I think it's like 2011. It was a PDF. Like, it wasn't a hardback copy. In fact, it might have been a download. It was just like in Word. I could probably pull it up and find it, but I think he had like a couple of different like little packets. One was like 33 letters you can use in your lawn care business, and another one was like the guide to commercial properties or something like that.
That's so valuable, because like I said, you were doing 200,000, but what made you decide that it was time to get a mentor, or what made you search for that?
Well, so here's what's interesting. I think I was doing about 100,000 when he and I connected. That was my senior year of college. And I sent him an email with a question and he called me. So he reached out to me and I was like blown away because I didn't know much about this guy. I didn't know who he was. In my eyes, he was some big lawn care company out on the East Coast. I mean, I didn't know anything about his business or who he was. And I just got this phone call from him and he just said like, hey, like you're an articulate guy. You asked a good question. And I mean, I'm sure he was trying to, pick up consulting clients as well.
Right.
But I jumped on the opportunity to have someone coach me through it because I'd been so impacted by his book because it had just helped direct my energy and attention. And so, yeah, I don't even remember what it was called now, but he reached out to me and I decided to do it. And I mean, it changed my life. Just to get into that mentality of having a coach or a mentor, Yeah.
And then from there, you decided like, okay, now you have to seek out a better coach.
Well, yeah. So then I kind of fell into the service autopilot world and started finding peer groups and making friends with that. I'm a huge believer in having peer groups. I think that, there's a couple ways of thinking that just are game changers in terms of the success of what someone's going to be. And some of them is like, a belief that an alternative approach works. So like I talk in my business all the time. I say that, the 6 most expensive words in the English language are, that's how it's always been done. And so in my market, like everyone was doing everything the exact same way. And I started making friends in other parts of the country and seeing how people do it in Louisiana and North Carolina and Salt Lake City, in Texas, and kind of seeing what was going on. And I stumbled into a peer group of friends who were just doing things a little bit different than how it's done here. And I learned so much. And that's what led me into the academy world and, having a mentor in that regard.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then were you using a software before you got into the essay world?
Excel and QuickBooks.
Yeah.
Ironically, I think I got myself onto service autopilot in like 2011 or 12, but I was so busy. I told myself I was too busy to learn how to implement it. I think I paid for it for like 3 years before I really started using it. And I didn't really understand how to really use it until I bet it was like 2018 before I really like figured out the business model. Which again, business model is another way of thinking. It's like changing your business model makes everything easier.
Sure does.
Yeah.
Let's hit on that for a minute then. What is your business model? What did your business model look like before? And then what does your business model look like now?
Yeah. So our business model basically, and this is the same story everybody has here. I think this has been brought up on the podcast before. I was a prostitute with my business. I'd do anything for anyone, anywhere. And when you're starting out, you have to do whatever it takes to have cash coming in.
Agreed.
But man, like if I were to go back and say like, what would I do differently? Knowing what I know now, part of it would be having a better focus on what we want our business model to be and being, diligent and disciplined to stick to that. So what it used to be is like we were buying big expensive trucks with big expensive trailers with big expensive mowers with guys that requires a lot of training and onboarding to do that. I had an experience where I lost like 50% of my staff in a month when I was growing the company, doing mostly commercial. And I was just emotionally devastated. It just destroyed me. I didn't know what to do. It was just a wildly painful experience, just emotionally, mentally, everything. And I decided that the easiest part of the business was the residential side because we could train a new guys to run a push mower. And I started to think, okay, so we're doing these apartment complexes and, it takes 4 guys a full day to do a complex. And then we work for 30 days, then you send the bill, then you wait 30, 60, 90 days to get paid. It takes 2 weeks as a sales process, 3 weeks to even sell the account. And then the property manager is going to get traded out to some other state in a month. So I have to, redevelop relationships every year. So we were doing a lot of commercial work like that. And I realized, if we shrink our market, we don't need to go all over the place. We're going to work just in certain areas. And we're going to change the type of clients that we go after. We're just going to go after residential and it's going to be under 20,000 square feet. We're going to buy smaller trucks with smaller mowers that are easier to train people in on. And then, hey, instead of working for 30 days and then waiting to get paid, we're going to go credit card only. So if we mow your lawn on Monday, we'll charge your card on Tuesday. And then we thought, well, okay, if that's what we're doing, well, now we can sell this over the phone. So we can change how we do the bidding process. We can change how we're selling the work. We can change how we advertise the work and who we advertise to. And so it kind of just changed everything about what we did. Then we realized, well, what services should we really be offering right now? What do we even care about? And not mowing. Mowing's a foot in the door to a degree, but mowing's a pain in the ass. And so, we kind of we're still tinkering with this as we move along, but those are some of the business model things that we changed. We changed the geographic location, how we sold the work, how we priced the work, how we got paid for the work, how we marketed ourselves. We're still cutting grass, we're still taking care of lawns, but how we did it was way different than anyone in our market.
That's awesome. And I'm sure, like you said, when you got into that academy group, you started to learn those types of things that again change your trajectory of your entire company. You brought up a couple of things. It did. In there. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So you brought up a couple of key things in there that I want to touch on real quick. Like, so you scaled back from commercial, went strictly to residential, charging cards daily. What did that do as far as cash flow purposes for your company?
It did. It changed everything. I mean, it used to be that, you'd get your last check in December or January, and then you have to start off the year buying equipment, buying tools, paying your guys overtime because the grass is growing like crazy, and you're not really getting your first. Then you work through, and this is assuming you have snow. I'm in a snow market in Nebraska where sometimes it snows, and then you can go 2 years and it snows once. So like we're just in this tundra of like nothing, and there's no way to make money. It's terrible. And so if you don't have a snow year, like much snow that year, we start work in April, but then you bill out the work in May, which means you don't really get paid until June. So, you're going for 6 months on having to be the bank for all these clients. And when we went credit card only, it changed. Suddenly we have money like right now, which means now we can go buy whatever we need right now, or now we have a marketing budget right now. We stopped relying on lines of credit, stopped relying on loans. We can pay cash for way more stuff now. It changed the way we made decisions.
Yeah, if there was any golden nuggets from this podcast, that was a massive one right there. So I agree with you 100%. And we did the same thing. We just changed our business model. We were having the same frustration you guys were. Like, we've been through this whole thing ourselves. We just knew that we had to change the business model going forward too. We dropped snow because we're in the same market as your type of market you're in. Sometimes it snows, sometimes it doesn't. Most people didn't want to be on contracts around here. There wasn't a bit enough commercial work for everyone was fighting for the same contract, so they just wanted to like fight with the price to the bottom to go plow a parking lot for $50. I'm like, I'm not getting out of my bed for $50. That's not how it works. So we just got rid of that model. Do you currently still offer snow?
We do. So we're getting really into the inverted snowblower, residential concept. I am completely, absolutely sold on this business model.
Yep. I knew this answer before I asked, but I wanted you to talk to about it.
I'm all in on it. And actually we just had 2 snowstorms in this last week. They're both like 1 inch, so it was nothing. But like everyone ran it flawlessly. Like I barely had to be a part of it, which proved to me, because I've been so involved in commercial snow, and commercial snow is it's so difficult. And the biggest part there's so many variables you can't control. Most of it is timing. And so you don't know, you have to have everybody on standby. You have to have skilled operators. You have to have a crazy investment in equipment, which you do in the residential model here too. But you don't know if you're going to get paid, because in our market, no one's doing seasonal contracts on commercial. So you get paid for push, and then it's like, hey, it stops snowing at 4 a.m. You have to start at 7. You have to have things cleared by 7, and it's just really hard to juggle all the stuff that goes into that. And on this residential model, we're the first ones to bring this to our market and to do residential at scale with these inverted blowers with these tractors. And so we realized, like, no one's doing this. We're kind of creating a new game, so we get to make up the rules to the game. So like we get to do this however we want. We get to come up with what's the value of the service, what's the pricing, what should it look like, when do we offer it? Maybe we only offer it between 5 a.m. and midnight. No more middle of the night stuff. People don't even want it at their house in the middle of the night. And while everyone in North Dakota and the northern states and Canada are still going out at 2 o'clock in the morning, we've decided, screw that. Like, what do the trash companies do? They start at 5 a.m. Let's do what they do. So we controlled the timing on when we need to operate the service, and we've built it into routes where we can get through an entire route in 4 to 5 hours. So even if you start at 5 a.m., you still have everyone cleared by 9.
That's awesome. So you have a single operator, right? How many houses can the operator do in his route?
Well, it's route density. It's just like everything else in home service businesses. It's route density is everything. So I think the industry average is one tractor can clear 150 to 200 houses in a 4 to 5 hour span, if they're close enough together. We do not have that route density yet, but we're building it out as we speak right now.
That's great. I've had a couple of inverted mowers or inverted blowers in the past, and they're amazing. They clear so fast. I think we're doing like houses in like 4 to 6 minutes. Like, I remember just practicing on my driveway. It's just 2-car garage, and we were clearing in like 3 to 4 minutes. It was so fast. The problem here, we used to
It's
have enough
crazy.
people. Like there are just not enough houses around here to go around that can
Well, and that's
afford
the
the
thing.
service.
Yeah, and that's part of it. I mean, I live in a market, and it's similar to you. I mean, Lincoln's bigger than what town were you from?
Escanaba, there's 14,000 people here.
Yeah, and I mean, Lincoln's a lot bigger than that. But even in our city, Lincoln is extremely blue collar, extremely modest. People do not spend money here the way they do, even in like Omaha or Kansas City or Des Moines. It's a very, very, very modest city. And so selling this has been hard in terms of, letting people know this even exists and then having enough houses that would sign up for it. But that's an excuse if we have bigger dreams.
Agreed.
Because there are other cities and other markets and other places we can take this to.
Yeah, I love that. So you brought up a couple key points there. Like you could pretty much do whatever you want to do because you're the first one to do it. You created like a blue ocean strategy in your own little market. I don't know if you ever read that book before, but
I have not.
It's
Educate
really
me here.
So it's just saying like there's red oceans and there's blue oceans, and red oceans are the things that everyone's doing. They're doing it all the same way, like you said, right? Like the 7 words. Or the blue ocean is doing total opposite. No one else is doing it, and you create that blue ocean. You could pretty much get what you ask for. So you did the model without even knowing the book, but you created a blue ocean for yourself. Is your vision to take this to new markets?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, when you think about taking a business to another market, there are a lot of things that come to mind. And you can take the Mike Andes approach with Augusta Lawn Care and have like 150 little mini franchises where, you own Command Central, and then they take your brand and you do all the marketing and the administrative work, and these guys just get the work done. With that concept, you could have several mini franchises within one city. And then you have to say, like, what are your service offerings going to be like? How are you going to roll this out? Mm-hmm. Another way to take this to another town would be like, hey, we're just going to go do seasonal snow removal in a market, and then we're going to have all of our stuff. And what are we talking? Are we going year round? Or are we just doing snow?
Right.
If we take snow to another market, who owns the equipment? Does the company own the equipment? There are a lot of ways you could write this franchise concept, and it's very interesting. And there is a guy doing it right now who's franchising residential snow. I think he's the first one to do it. His name is Nick Boner. He's in Canada, and I think he has like 6 locations right now. He went from 2 to 6 in the last year, and I don't know how big they are, each of their locations, but he's doing it right now. So it's interesting to watch and see how he plays this out.
For sure. What's your thoughts on the whole franchise model?
I think that there's power in anything. I mean, anything can be done wrong. Let's say that you are. So, are you familiar with the concept of like an entrepreneur?
Yeah.
Like Patrick Bet-David's thing?
Yeah, I have like 3 or 4 of them that work with me.
Yeah, absolutely. So like there are people who are totally capable of doing big things, but maybe they don't want to create a brand, or they don't want to be the face of an organization. They don't want to be like the loud marketing piece of whatever that is. And there are different personality types to this. I think there's a huge opportunity for people to franchise. If you could buy into a Chick-fil-A franchise, like a lot of people would do that if they could, because it's a great business. It's already proven for you. Buy a book of business that you know is going to work, and you get the brand name that's going to do half the selling for you. All you have to do is go perform it. Being a franchisee is a huge opportunity for someone who doesn't want to build their own brand, but they want all the answers, and they want to go knock it out and then go build their business that way. Maybe their ego isn't tied to having their own brand. That's a great person to run a franchise, in my opinion.
Agreed, 100%. What's the downsides of owning a franchise?
I would say the downsides to owning a franchise is if you do want to build your own brand, or 100% autonomy to do things however you want, you're going to have some guardrails and restrictions if you are a franchisee. And if that doesn't matter to you, then it's no problem. But if it does matter to you, I'm of the opinion, I mean, I'll use an example here. Let's say that you want to start we'll use Chick-fil-A. You want to have a Chick-fil-A franchise, but you also really want to sell burgers. They're not going to let that happen. They're not going to let you sell. Even if you went and sourced your own beef supplier, they will not allow it. So if you're passionate about selling chicken and beef, Chick-fil-A is probably not the right franchise for you, because you're going to have restrictions there. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I totally get it.
Yeah.
I just had the same conversation over the past week with some high-level people and attorneys, because we're doing what we're doing and saying, is that the right model? Is it not the right model? So I was like, I just want to get your opinion. And my biggest, one of my biggest holdups with it all is like, I think of like, I'm not throwing anyone under the bus by any means, but like let's just go with True Green because they're easy to talk about.
Mhm.
When a True Green branch wants to sell, how many people are interested in buying?
Well, who's even the buyer
Right,
for
that's
a
what I
true
mean.
branch? Yeah. So I mean, well, it depends. I mean, take me along with. I want to see where you're going with this, and then I'll comment on here.
So I just think, okay, so if you have, I mean, I'm just picking them. There's Mosquito Squad. There's a bunch of franchises all over the place that are for sale, and they're usually for sale for 6, 8 months to a year, and no one's touched them. Well, why? Well, because no one really wants to own a franchise except for those entrepreneurs that are bought in from the beginning, like the Mike Andes model, right? Young kids, entrepreneurs that want to do it. They want all the answers, like you said, that don't necessarily need to be tied to the whole thing themselves, but the end game at the very end of it all for Mike himself. What's more valuable? Something that he owns control of majority or something that he owns a small majority in each branch? And then who is the buyer for that?
I mean, there are fewer and fewer, and if I mean, let's say even still, like let's say, if the big picture here is, I'm building my business because I want to sell to private equity. If you own your own brand, you're going to have a bigger multiplier versus if you're a franchisee of somebody else. But not everyone who wants to run a franchise, they might be passionate because they love the industry that they're servicing. Like they are doers.
Yeah.
Well, that's not the right word I want to use, but like I think some people who own a franchise, it's because they love the work that they're doing, not because they're trying to grow a big business that they can sell themselves. And there's two sides to that conversation, but who are the buyers and who's the one who gets to actually sell it in the end? Who owns the valuable asset?
Right.
Is it the one who owns the brand and all of the franchises, or is it the person who just ran that local branch? And it depends on what your end game is.
Yeah. So I just talked to Paul, and he owns the Potomac Group, who deals with massive companies like who did he just sell? He helped sell Terminex. So $1 billion deals. So I went straight to him, Paul Gianamore. Like I said, he owns one of the largest private equity firms in the world, and he's traveling all over the world doing big deals for companies. I said, hey, what's worth more in the end? Private, like a franchise model or a model like we're doing? He's like, 100% what you're doing, don't go franchise model. And I was like, well, why?
Really?
Yeah. And so I was like, well, why? And he started, there was a million different reasons why not to do it. I'm like, okay, answer. So I went to the top expert in the world and asked him what his thoughts were in the very end of it all. Like, what's worth more? And not just that for myself, but what's more valuable to my entrepreneurs? Like, where are they going to make the most money? And he said 100% on this side of the world, like joint venture deals. So
when you're saying don't go the franchise model, you're saying instead just have like corporately owned branch locations where it's not franchise. I mean, is that, if I'm understanding you right?
Yeah, just so you'll maintain majority control, but your entrepreneurs will probably have a higher equity percentage in the company. They'll help you run with you, like Patrick says, or like a running mate. Find yourself a couple good running mates and run with them. So that's one of the questions that I asked when I was at this high level event last week. Like people like Paul, and I could, hey, nail him down for a second. Like, what is the one question that I want to answer from this whole trip? And that was the one question that I had, because I have people all the time saying, hey, when I start franchise, like every day, like not a joke. And they want to open up branches with me, and I'd be more than willing to do it. But what's the model that we want to run with, And so we decided that, if a company that came up for sale instead of it being a franchise, like, yeah, both owners could just sell out. There's no franchise tag to it. Like, we have more possibility of selling that at a higher value, like you said, to a private equity firm, or we can just say, oh, this branch is for sale, not the rest of them. So talking to Paul, through that process was very interesting. And then, of course, my lawyer was out there, and I'll give him a shout out, Phil Reinhart. And I talked to him through the same thing. He's like, yeah, obviously, when you go over to state lines, you have to be like not publicly traded, but what's the word I'm looking for? You have to be publicly trademarked. So if you sell in a different state like Nebraska, you should go get your logo and your name trademarked, right? So we had to go through the process. It doesn't cost very much, but that way, if someone else says, hey, we want to open up a turf badger, and you come in their state, they can just shut you right down because they're trademarked. So it's something like that. Like, and all you have to do is you have to have like a one client outside of the state that you service and able to apply to get trademark. So it's something that going forward, if it's something you want to do, just reach out to, I could get with him and just get your logo. I think anyone should do it that owns a bigger company, because anyone could just come in and say, hey, like, this is our name, we're trademarked. They got to shut them down. All of a sudden, they're sending you cease and assist orders. So
it's funny you say that. So we're going through a rebrand right now.
Yeah.
And so all new logo, all new colors. And this is in preparation for when we grow beyond Lincoln. Because I think we're a big fish in a small pond at this point, and there's only so much. There's still some juice to squeeze out of here, but it's time to start going to other markets, other territories. For sure by 2025 is our plan.
Cool.
And so right now we're planning for that, and we're going to a whole new rebrand, all new everything. And the agency that we're working with was adamant. They're like, hey, like we would really like trademark this now, because you don't want, like, as you start to get into other territories, this is going to be a thing you might run into. So we've trademarked everything as we're going through it. And I mean, we paid and it's nothing, like $200 or something. Yeah. It's not even expensive.
Right. So yeah, definitely something to do. And it's something that caught my attention a few months ago. Someone brought it up to me. I'm like, oh yeah, we better do that. So reach out to him and say, hey man, we got to get this. He's like, you think we should do it? He's like, oh, absolutely. You have to do it. So yeah, a good nugget for everyone else that is thinking about scaling at some point is just, go out there, hire an attorney, get a trademark, so that way no one else can take your name. Because a good example of that, one of my mentors, he ran into the same process. He was like doing like 10 million in revenue. There was another company that was in Florida that had the same exact name that caught wind of them. They actually the big company actually had to pay the small company for rights of the name. And it cost them a couple $100,000. The guy was doing like $200,000 in revenue, and they're doing 10 million, but he had the name first.
Yeah. Which can tell, it can happen. Frankly, that happens more often than you think. In fact, there's a lot of people in the same markets, or like, within maybe 100 miles of each other, but everyone's kind of flying under the radar. No one's really that aware of each other, or they're not crossing into each other's boundaries, so no one cares. But as soon as someone starts reaching over to the other market, it's, everyone gets litigious, and there's a target on the back. When you start doing big things, people see an opportunity like that. And so, I guess prepare yourself now
for sure
for whatever you're into.
When you were talking about your inverted snowblowers, and you said, there's a lot of people that you wanted to reach out to that don't know they did the service. What was your best form of marketing? What was your marketing strategy to get those clients?
Well, I'll tell you this, we're still working on it. And so we just started rolling this out in the last 2 years. And in the last 2 years in Lincoln, it snowed like once last year, and it snowed like twice this year. So we basically are selling this like a season pass.
Yeah. And
part of what we're struggling with right now is educating the market on the value of this, because right now they're like, I don't want to pay all this money to use it one time. And so it feels like a gamble. And I say this because part of our marketing is just, we have to educate the market that this even exists. It's not even just like, hey, like get this service. It's like, this is something that you can even do. You can buy unlimited snow removal, where we come if it snows at least an inch, we'll be there within 4 hours at any given time. Doesn't matter what happens. You have guaranteed coverage an unlimited number of times all year long. And so when it comes to the marketing, we're still tinkering with that. And the things that we are doing right now, we're doing a lot of stuff on Facebook, not to convert sales or convert leads, but more so just to have like brand awareness, service awareness. We do a lot with Facebook. We did a lot of internal marketing. And so one of our biggest things is with internal upsells, email, text messages. Those are big ones. And doing a lot of automated campaigns to our existing clients. We also tie in upsell opportunities on the back end of other services. So like, let's say we finish a fertilizer application in November. On their receipt, they're getting advertisements for snow removal in their email tied to it. And like in ways to easily get a quote, easily get signed up. Ironically, and I don't have the data to back this up, but I feel like Facebook and Google are so saturated now that everyone has kind of forgotten the old fashioned ways of doing things, which is like postcards. And I know you're door knocking like galore, and that's huge in the pest control world, but it's like everyone has stopped doing postcards. And I actually feel like it's like everyone is playing this game over here on this court. And if you go over to this field, there's not a lot of people going on over here, and you could actually bring back an old school methodology and just crush it with that. And I have a friend and another friend who does residential snow. He went from like, I think last year he had 400 clients, and this year he has 1,900. So he's grown by like 1,300 accounts or whatever. That math isn't right, but he's growing like crazy. And his main thing was postcards.
That's so funny that you say that, because I just made a YouTube video like 2 months ago. That was like the top 14 guerrilla marketing tactics for lawn care companies. It's the most viewed video that we have on YouTube.
Really?
And it's so easy. And I've said this a million times. Like, everyone's going after the same exact clients, but they're all fighting from the same exact place. They're all on Google and Facebook. They're paying $150 a lead. I don't see it get any cheaper. But no one else is over here doing this thing. Like, that's the easy way to go do it. Just give someone money and let them burn through it and see what happens. Or you can just go the old school way. Maybe your returns aren't as much, but your cost of acquisition is actually way cheaper. So instead of $150 over here, it's costing you $14 to $30 over here. And so that's the model we went to. We just did what we were taught back in the day, like dominate your market strategy, and then added, voicemail bombs to that. And then our door knockers going through there. Like, it was a massive home run.
Interesting.
So that's the strategies that we teach. Like, could you imagine if you have every door direct mailers, some postcards, you have door hangers, you have voicemail bombs, you're doing marketing campaigns through through your email, and then all of a sudden you have a team roll up through you. So they said it takes 7 times for them to see you before they'll actually make a decision. And if you're 7 times a sales guy rolling through your market, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think the biggest aspect of that, especially with dominate your market, is it's a wheel with a lot of spokes, and 1 spoke or 3 spokes can't support the whole thing.
Right.
I feel like, recognize which spokes are bearing more weight. I understand do track your marketing, your lead sources, so you know where stuff's coming from. Yeah. But I just feel like so much stuff gets left behind because it's really easy to do Facebook and Google. You can lazy. You can be so lazy and do it. And obviously you can work harder with more engaging content, but using more spokes in that wheel for the dominate your market concept is super powerful.
Agreed. And so then that's just what we did. So we went the total opposite direction of what everyone else is doing. Of course, you have to still be on those platforms. We still have to pay money to Google. You still have to pay money to Facebook. But again, like you said, like with door knocking, it's just a spoke in the wheel too. It's not end all be all. It's not the greatest thing since sliced bread, but it's another tool that we can use. And you said it perfectly. Yes, everyone's doing it for pest control, but how many people know how to do it for lawn care? 0.
No, nobody does it in lawn care. And if they did, if they're going to put all their eggs in that basket, again, it's a wheel. They're spokes. It's the postcard timed with the voicemail bomb, timed with the text message follow up, timed with the door knocker. There's an order of operations here. Yeah,
and then that's just how we knocked out of the park. And like everyone's like, I get asked on a daily basis of how to do door knocking for lawn care. So that's how this got created, Pest Control Millionaire. I couldn't take a lawn care millionaire because Jonathan already had it. So I said, hey, what do you think about this? He said, it's a brilliant idea. You have to roll this out because no one else is doing it. So that's what we did. We built an online platform for people to come in and use our platform to teach people how to go knock doors. We can white label it for your company so you can have all your training videos on there, core values, whatever you guys want. You can just upload it yourselves, So, but my content will still be on there. So it's been a huge win for us, and it's a way that I can give back a lot of value to people too, like in our industry.
Yeah. Jonas, I got a question for you.
Sweet.
So, a recurring theme on your podcast here has been, think bigger. Like if I could go back, like what would I do on think bigger? What are some examples of some ways that you're thinking bigger now that you were not thinking even 12 months ago, even a year ago? What are ways that you're thinking bigger now?
That's a great question. Thanks for asking that. So I would say even just from a year ago, I was still on the premise of my local, not so much neighborhood, because I started to get out there. It's like I started the first branch, started the second branch, and now we're going on branch number 5. And it's like Jonathan always said, think bigger. And I'm from this town of 14,000 people. Never been out of state before at this point, 10 years ago. And I always had big dreams. And I always knew I was sent to this earth to do big things, but I just didn't have the vehicles to take me there. And now I have found that vehicle, whether it's on the podcast side or if it's on branding myself or whether it's on the business itself, but growing it as a whole entity at the same exact time and going into a whole new scale. Like, okay, now I know after speaking with Jonathan, he's like, Jonas, there's a lot of people that I could talk to on a daily basis and they're all going to do big things. He's like, there's very, very few people that I've met that's going to do 100 million and you're one of them. And I was like, holy crap. Now my mentor believes that I can pull this thing off. Now that one conversation was a mindset shift for me. Like, okay, I know that I could do it, but now I have someone that's that large, like you can do this. Like that was a mindset shift. And like, okay, what does 100 branches look like and how hard is it really? And you start doing the math. You're like, well, it's really not that hard. It's just people. So if we took all of our 8 hours or 10 hours or 12 hours a day that we're focused on getting new work and put that into people, like imagine how fast we can scale that thing. So that's what we started doing. So now we're going to have anywhere from, I'm going to guess 75 to 100, guys out knocking doors this summer, and how many of those are going to be new leaders for next year? And so how fast can we actually get there?
Is that part of your model where you're taking guys who are door knockers and then letting them become the leaders of your new branches as you expand?
Yep. And it's a common thing in the pest control side, but I took it to the lawn care side, and running that same model. But it's like, so now I have all these guys, and then it's like, okay, well, now we have this whole other platform where people are like, hey, like, we want to work with you. What does that franchise look like? I don't really want to do a franchise, but hey, if you're willing to do these things and you want to work with us, like, we'll let's do a joint venture together. It's like, okay, so that's my goal for this year is 12 joint ventures. And I just got my first one like 2 weeks ago. So now we're adding people from internally, right, that are doing their own branches, plus doing joint ventures. Now we can get to 100 fast. So instead of doing, 2 to 3 a year like we did this year, now we can start doing 10, 12, and next year, maybe 30 a year. So it's just a whole, so the question goes back to, where was my mindset 12 months ago is like, yeah, I could have taken my internal guys and opened 5 branches. But now I have this whole other side of people that actually want to do business with us because we're doing such big things and they see it. And they're like, hey, we want to run with you. Like, we're a smaller company, but hey, we want to run it with you. You teach us how to do it and we'll do this thing together. And now instead of, like I said, opening 3 to 5 branches a year, we could literally do 15, 20, 30 a year easily. So that would be the 12-month shift.
Gotcha. That's very interesting. So let's take that same mindset and let's make it relatable to people in let's do this. So that's a mindset shift to go from 3 to 5 million to 100 million. What's a mindset shift that you think people need to be making to go from 2 million to 5 million? Because I feel like there's a lot of people that are stuck in that trap right now. And that's different than what you're talking about right now. So what are the weeds that people are getting caught up in where they're not thinking bigger, that you think that you're recognizing right now that you think is a problem?
So I travel a lot and I see a lot of businesses, right? And what I find most common in all 1 to 3, $4 million companies is that they're all hanging out with the same exact people. Like they say the average is 5 people hang out with most. So they get into these groups and they get stuck there with all these same people that are all doing 3 to 5 million. Right. So you're just going to be the average. So getting yourself outside of those things and connecting with people who are doing 100 million and see how they think, how they operate, what they look like at a granular level. Like, okay, let's copy those guys. Let's hang out with those guys. Let's talk to those guys on a daily basis. They kind of get stuck there. And then other than going from 3 to 5, I think it's just networking really, really well and using the resources that you have. So like, let's say you're friends with a big HVAC companies that's got 10,000 accounts. Like, why not work with those companies? Why not go build those relationships where they're going to swap work? That's such an easy way to scale. Or maybe you're doing fertilization weed control, right? And you have 100 other companies that are around you just do lawn care. Great. Why don't you go pay those guys as a sales guy for every lawn that they get you for FERT? Give them whatever you would pay online. So say your cost of acquisition is $100, $150. Why not give this kid who's mowing 300-400 lawns $125 to go get you a new customer? So let's say all these people are doing 10,000 lawns and you get 10% of them. That's 1,000 lawns. What did it cost you? Do the math. 10,000. You got 1,000 times 125. That's just what it costs you. But you're not doing any more marketing. They're marketing for you.
Now, are those tactics that you're using right now, or those are just theories that
No, it's absolutely what we do right now. So like my some of my guys that are I call my running mates. It's the first thing I teach them. You have to build relationships with big companies in town because they don't offer the same services we do. But if you make good networking with those guys, it's free advertisement. Like their salesmen are selling it for you because they're going to get commission on it, even if it's a solo operator.
Yeah. You're telling your salesmen to go make buddies with the salesman? Like, let's use HVAC. You're having your salespeople go be buddies with the sales guys from the HVAC company. So this isn't even like owner of Turf Badger to owner of John's HVAC. Right, this is salesman to salesman, and they just have their own little internal ecosystem that they're doing back and forth.
100%. And the same thing with like solo operators. Let's say you have you have a guy who's running 2-3 man crews doing mowing. Now let's just say they're doing 300 lawns. They're small, right? They're not doing any applications. They're just mowing lawns. Why not go network with those guys? Even if they sell 10%, it's still 30 lawns that you couldn't market to them any other way. But they've already built the rapport. Like, hey, we have this friend who's willing to do this for us. Like, who takes care of your lawn? You get 10%. That's 30 new clients overnight.
And you're just doing like your client acquisition cost.
Yeah.
Which is if you're running your business smartly,
Yeah.
Yep. Gotcha.
So it's super simple to scale. So like I said, especially in a bigger market, like there's some big companies that just do mowing. And they have a couple thousand people that they can market for. Great. Let's get your marketing list. Let's take it from you. Let's upload it into whatever you want to do. Like, what are some good ones? Like what's a good CRM besides like Service Autopilot? Like MailChimp. Let's use a MailChimp, for example. Take those 2,000 or 3,000 people, put them in MailChimp and just do a marketing campaign for their company. It didn't cost you anything. But they're making money. So every time that you get a new client, you're getting $150. You get 10 clients. Do the math. It's just money in their pocket that they didn't have. And it helps with their cash flow.
I like it. Last question for you, Jonas, that I got. What is something big that you want to get done before the end of this quarter, by April 1st?
We just hired our CFO, and we're actually onboarding this COO. So this morning, actually, was doing an interview for a COO, and I have a couple more that I'll have in the next couple months, but we're bringing that person on just because we're at scale. Like, our operations manager is really, really good, but it's just like getting to that next level, right? Kind of like with the CFO from from a person that's just kind of doing financials, like a CPA you send them out to, or even just like a fractional CFO, which is great at that. It's smaller, but as you get bigger, you have to have like that person that's in-house so you can get the answers straight away. You always know your acquisition costs. You always know your overhead, like on a daily basis, your sales, your revenue, and all those things that you know about, but no one's ever actually watching them on a daily basis. And we're putting on so many accounts throughout an entire day. We're adding, 70 to 100 clients a day. And, if we get 100 people out there knocking and we're adding 300 clients a day, we just got to make sure that we aren't losing them out the back door. So that's where the COO comes in to make sure that all of our standard operating procedures are in place and everyone's trained the right way, and just really watching the numbers so that, like I said, we just don't lose all of our customers, because at this scale, losing customers at the back end can really cost you a lot of money. So,
that's something that we're starting to experience now is the power in attrition, which, not that we never paid attention to before, but it's a lot more real when the numbers get bigger.
For sure. And especially like in like the door-to-door space, attrition is super important. We have we'll have a whole division built out just for, cancellations, like customer service, like dealing with those people.
Well, and so much of that ties into, how the operations run as a whole. We were talking last week about SOPs and if like someone like me, I freaking hate writing standard operating procedures. I hate writing systems and processes. I have an idea in my mind on how I want it to go, but I don't want to be the one to document it. And frankly, I would just as soon have someone else in the company, like they're the expert for that department. Like, how this department is done. And I feel like that's something that like a lot of people don't even have. They have a way that they do it, which is communicated verbally, but it's not a documented process that could be handed to someone else at another branch location. You know what I mean?
And I agree with you 100%, because a lot of people, they'll run into a situation where they don't know how to handle it, right? And it could happen 10 times a year. They still don't know how to handle it. But if they had a document procedure how to handle that, there would be no questions about it. Just go back to that document, go exactly through that process, and that's how you handle it. So you and I talked last week, like, hey, like, what do you do for SOPs? And I said, well, we actually hired someone out. Yeah, it was super expensive, but it's way less expensive at 5 million than it is at 100 million. So like that Patrick Bet-David's thing, this fall, and that's what they did. They hired a person to come in and do other SOPs at like 30 million. They were there for like 6 to 8 months. It cost them a fortune. So he's like, if there's one thing that you could do now, make sure to do this now, because it'll save you millions and millions of dollars. So I found someone that would build them out for us, and they were, it was fractional, but I talked to them on a bi-weekly basis, and we're constantly changing them, constantly making them better, constantly updating. But again, going back to training, from day one, everyone's trained the same exact way. So I could swap a person from Grand Rapids to Madison, and it's not going to make a difference because they're trained the exact same way.
So what does that look like? You have a fractional person? Is it like is it contractor, or is it like a relationship? And where do they come? Do they come visit your facility, kind of interview different department heads and see how people are doing things, or how does that relationship work in that dynamic?
So we just do a Zoom call, and we just go through whatever it is that day. You know, it could be on the service side, could be on the sales side, could be on whatever side, it doesn't matter. And he says, okay, what are you trying to create here? What do you want to do? And he said, what do you do now? And then he'll jump on the phone with my technicians or people in the office, and they'll ask him a bunch of questions. And then 2 weeks later, he's got a process. Then we go back through the process. And if there's something that we want changed, he updates it. There's products been updated, update new products. So, and we're not done either. Like I was just on the phone with him for an hour yesterday, doing 3 more for the month. So it'll probably be an ongoing thing for the next year, I would say, till everything's completely done. But it's again a massive win for us.
I mean, that's the playbook for any branch location. Once this is done, I mean, that's it. That's the secret sauce to Turf Badger right there.
Exactly. So we have a whole sales playbook done. We have a recruiting playbook done. And now we're working on our operations playbook. So like you said, we'll have a massive playbook by the time we're done with this thing. And then that's how you scale, simplify, and you scale it,
I love it.
What I know we're running out of time here, but I have one question for you. I got a couple questions. What is the most important advice that you've gotten since you started your company?
Man, I have a hard time with superlatives, like the greatest or the most or the best or whatever.
There's always something that sticks out.
Something that sticks out. Piece of advice that I got.
Like mine's the think bigger one.
Yeah, I'd say that. Okay, here's one. And I don't know if this is like an Ed Milet thing. I don't know where I learned. This is a conversation, and I'm not really into the Ed Milet world, but I have a friend who is, and this conversation comes up between us as not quit as a superpower. So like the ability to, here's what it's withstanding or something like that. It's the concept of like it's a superpower to just not quit. And there's a difference between doing something really stupid forever and ever and ever and never getting better. But so much of when things get really hard, not quitting and just surviving through this hardship, because the lessons that we learn being on the other side of that is what makes us, the leaders that we become. And I guess part of that mentality is that failure is not a failure. Like to fail at something doesn't mean that I failed. To fail at something means, hey, I learned a lesson today, so I can be better tomorrow. Which means when this sucked, when all this stuff went wrong, it doesn't mean quit and leave. It means great, I will never have to do that again. I just paid that dumb tax, and now I can keep going, and things are going to be better on that front as long as I learn my lesson and change and adapt moving forward. Does that make sense? I'm kind of tying a couple ideas together.
100%. So I just had this conversation this morning with one of my guys. I'm like, I think I'm batting pretty good average. I'd say like 70% of my decisions are the right decisions, but then there's still that 30% where I'm like, I kind of messed up. I'm like, well, I messed up that, but I'm definitely never going to do that. So over time, over the last 12 years, I've just gotten better and better and better, where next year, hopefully I'm doing 80%, 85%, 90%. We're never going to be perfect. But again, if you learn from your mistakes, you're always going to get better and have a better batting average.
Yeah. And we moved into a new facility like 2 years ago. Sweet. And one of the things that I care a lot about is making people feel like they're proud to work in this industry. Yeah. So they're not embarrassed to say they work at a lawn care company. Love that. So part of that was like making our facility look nice, like, and not like in a gaudy way, but like make it like have some presentation to this. And that's always been a part of our brand anyways. I care a lot about people not being embarrassed of the industry that they work in. So we've started, like, people come through and they're like, oh, wow, like this is like a really cool facility you have. And I always say, well, this is the culmination of all of my failures. Yeah, like, I love that. The only reason I have this is because I'm not going to cuss here, like screwed everything up in all these other ways. And here's what we're left with on the other end of that.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because we were just talking about this last week, like looking at our office. I'm like, we have a nice office, but it's like, how can we make this office so when people walk into this, like, they're shocked that it's a lawn care company or a pest control company? Like,
that's exactly what we talked about.
Our trucks are legit. They look sick. Like, guys wearing pink. They're riding on segways. Like, every part of our company and culture is super fun and cool. We have to tie in our office. Like, so I was like, okay, what can we do? Like, not like a smoothie bar. Like, could we have something cool that sticks out? Like when people come in, like, you have a smoothie bar at a lawn care company? Like, how cool is that? So every morning you get smoothies or whatever that looks like. We can make it look super cool, So I'm right there with you. That's exactly what we're working through right now. But now we have we have to copy the model in 4 branches instead of 1,
Yeah, and then you got to think bigger. Okay, how can I take this of making this place sexy and cool, and then do it bigger? Yeah, with the balance of, like, we're not Google, we're not tech companies who like have like a little campus inside our own village or whatever, but being smart with it. But yeah, like that's a big passion for me. Is like, how do we make what we do cool?
Yeah. I seriously love that. Because like I said, it's, people are like, oh, it's lawn care or pest control. Like what? Like, that's a terrible industry when it's $1 billion industry. It's so great. And it's obviously proved it's recession proof.
Absolutely. And then, like I said, like part of it is like, even like if one of your greatest recruiting resources is referrals from your existing, stuff, you don't want your guys to be embarrassed to tell their family or their friends that they work at a lawn care company. You want them to be proud of it. You want them to feel good about it. So these are the ways that we do that.
Exactly. So you said proud of. So that's the last question to end with. What are you most proud of in your career?
Oh man, Jonas, I just had a conversation this morning. I the book, The Gap and the Gain?
Yep.
I am stuck in the gap right now, man. I'm not proud of anything. I live in perpetual dissatisfaction of everything, which is it fans the fuel on the flame of innovation and like moving forward and continuing to strive forward. But I think for a mental health standpoint and like being like proud of what you have, you have to look back and you have to measure yourself against what you've accomplished, not what you haven't accomplished yet. And I got to tell you, I struggle with that, man.
I think we all do.
What's that?
I think we all do.
Yeah. So, if you're something, I can say something I'm proud of. I am proud that a couple years ago, I told you we had a bunch of employees quit. And I basically, during that experience, I cut the company in half. I cut my company completely in half. I got out of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in commercial work at the time and rebuilt it and started over and then just shot off from there. And that was such an emotional experience for me to deal with, because it was in like May, and just to lose half of our company and half of our staff in one shot and then have to pivot, figure it out, adjust it, move forward and still succeed that year. But that was a long time ago, and I need to have a more modern thing that I'm proud of than that. And to be honest with you, it sounds like a total cop out, but I telling you, I really struggle with like, what am I even proud of right now? And I don't know the answer to that.
Didn't you just get married not too long ago?
Oh man, I hope okay. Amanda, don't watch this. Yes, I did. I did just get married this a few months ago. I am proud of that.
Awesome.
Because 31, and I was running around doing the single life, married to my business, and having the separation between here's my life, and here's my work life, and they're always going to be integrated. There's always going to be overlap. But I have been married to my job for 10 years now. It's this child, maybe not married. It's a child, and I've raised this child, and to learn how to build this business and then have someone else come into my life and then integrate our lives together. That's been hard for me, and I'm very proud of like the relationship that we've built and how well we've done it. I'm super proud of her for being patient, because I've probably been hard to live with.
That's awesome. So I would say that 100% I'm proud of you, dude. Like, you've done some big things in a short period of time, and I know it feels like a long time, but to start over and from scratch and start over and do it all over again, like, I know what that's like too. And not a lot of people can make that shift. Not a lot of people want to. Not a lot of people will actually do it. They'll just suffer, right? So you should be proud of yourself. You're an absolute stud, and I love watching what you're doing. But what do you think Amanda's most proud of?
Oh, of me or of her?
You.
Man, I don't know how to answer that question. I probably should be able to, and I'm totally stumbling right now. I told you, superlatives, man.
Yeah. But it just sometimes.
I love how you're reframing this. I get what you're doing.
Yeah.
No, man. I'm waffling. I'm totally waffling right now.
I'm sure if we had her on here, she'd tell you she's proud of a lot of things that you do on a daily basis.
Would.
Yeah.
I know she would.
I see your pictures online, Facebook and Instagram, and I can tell just by the way she looks at you, she's madly in love with you. So whatever you're doing, man, just keep doing it.
We're working on it. We're doing it.
Awesome. Well, cool. Like I said, I could talk to you forever. It's been an hour and like 15 minutes already, and I feel like there's so much more we need to talk about. But I promise it'd be about an hour, so I appreciate you being here. I learned a lot myself, and you're going to do some big things. You're still young, so keep at it.
We're working on it, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Of course.
Thanks for checking out another episode of the Pest Control Millionaire Podcast. If this was valuable to you, please leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. It really makes a big difference for our growth. And if you do need any help growing your business, go ahead and check out pestcontrolmillionaire.com. We have lots of courses up there, from sales to operations. I have some courses there about producing short form content. Plus, we have a mentorship program where you can get one-on-one business coaching from the Pest Control Millionaire himself. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.